Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that the regular meeting commence at the hour of 7 p.m. And be it further resolved, the Council acknowledges that we are meeting in the Robinson Superior Treaty Area on lands that have been traditionally used by several Indigenous nations. But we would like to pay special recognition to our closest Indigenous neighbors, the communities of Bidagон, Nishnabeg, and Pickmober First Nations. We wish to recognize the long history of the First Nations and Métis people in our region specifically and show respect to them today. All in favor? Thank you. Call the meeting to order.
One addition to the agenda. Addition to agenda item number 1302, Administration Report, AVM 2021-43, submitted by Jolene Keogh, Clerk, regarding revoked appointments bylaw dated September 22nd, 2021.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that the agenda be approved as amended. All in favor? Thank you. There are no delegations or presentations, so we'll move to the adoption of the previous minute. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Rolla. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting held September 6, 2021 are adopted as circulated. All in favor?
September 8th?
September 8th, 2021. Sorry. There are no petitions, no correspondence. Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that the minutes of the meeting of the Thunder Bay Board of Health held on June 16, 2021 are accepted as received. All in favor? You're on.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, a few short updates for you today. Just a reminder that the hazardous waste drop-off will be held this weekend at Public Works on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 11 Sioux Road. And again, this is a drop-off, so residents will have to bring their hazardous waste to the Public Works building. We've had a very busy season, a golfing season, and just to note that our clubhouse has now moved to takeout only as a result of the implementation of the province's vaccine certification program. So they'll be open until the end of the month for takeout, and the golf course will close at the end of the month. But I'd really like to thank Katie Law and all the staff over at the golf course and the clubhouse for not only their successful golf tournament this past weekend, but also a very successful golf season for the entire year. And those are my updates.
Thank you very much. Okay, moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report FBA 2021-09, submitted by Marcel Demers, Municipal Law Enforcement Officer, regarding a property standards bylaw. You're on, sir.
Good evening. Through the chair, good evening. So as per the admin report FBA 202109, we brought forward a new property standard bylaw to be approved by council for first and second reading. And then once that, if does happen, then it's going out for public consultation. And then from there, if there's any changes to be made or any question that you also had for me tonight, that's why we're here. So I don't know if everybody had a look at the bylaw, and if you have any question. I know Dave had a few questions, and we met Monday morning, And we did, so Dave's question was, for example, there was one in here with 10% lighting through a window. They want to know where that came from. Well, the 1987 maintenance and occupancy standard bylaw had the same thing. So it's from the building code. So that's standard through all, actually. I checked quite a few property standard bylaw, and they're all the same. So the other one was the smoke. We had one for nuisance, and so I spoke to Jolene and said, well, probably better to make an amendment because people are they're doing wood stove. So we will amend that to show that the smoke from a wood stove that is for cooking or warmth will not be part of the nuisance. Which one? What other one? Oh,
Through the chair, there was two more. There was one thing that we discussed there on the Electricity Act, if you recall.
Right.
The older homes. The other code stuff said new builds.
Right.
This one, I didn't see that. Did you find where?
So from what I understand is anything that was, as far as electrical system that was built prior to the bylaw, like anything that was done before is okay. Anything new that will have to come in will have to follow the new guideline.
So I get that. It's just building new to code, and that's. There was one other one. Sorry. Yeah.
The 25% of
Yes.
the backyard.
Yes. So our bylaw that's in place right at the moment. I get the view in the front. We're trying to make our community look really good, and we want everybody to do that. And we are a town of ATVs and snowmobiles and boats, and the one thing that I was a little leery about here is the backyard storage.
So
being limited to 25% of the yard.
yeah, but if the thing is, it's not made for vehicle or boats. It's made for domestic stuff. So it's like maybe you don't want to put your firewood, fill your backyard with firewood, or a bunch of lumbers or junk. Like it's made for the domestic waste type material. Domestic material. So domestic material is different than, because there is another section with boats and trailers and vehicles.
Okay, I apologize. That was my first read, and it was a very long read, and I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so it was.
So my little backyard, I can still put a boat in if it takes 75% of my yard?
That's correct.
Okay.
As long as it's in good repair. As it floats.
But again, this is going for public review.
That's correct, yes. And with that, there's going to be a survey attached to it with questions, and people can, agree with it, ask for changes. Maybe some will agree with part of it, but they may want to make minor changes. So that's going to be going out with the bylaw for public comment.
Can you go over just one more time domestic materials, what that entails?
Sure.
Did it say that in the bylaw?
So it doesn't say, there's no definition for the domestic material.
4.5.
There's definition for waste. And your 3.36 nuisance, there will be a change in there to add for the firewood,
Smoke.
wood stove. And, what's it, 4.5?
4.5. That was on my list.
Oh, it is. So, domestic material other than waste may be stored in the rear yard or a side yard versus property subject to the following rule. The storage of these materials shall not exceed 25% material. Then you got the storage of vehicle. You didn't put the section, so there it is. Storage of boat, recreational vehicle, trailer, or stimulant vehicle. Then you got that section 4.12, which is different than the section 4.5.
Through the chair, I think maybe, because I had the same question that Councillor Rolla did, there, like, I understand what it's saying, but it still doesn't give a definition of what you mean by domestic material. Like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, so.
Like, does that mean, if I don't burn wood at my house, but like, what does that mean for what I can put in my yard?
A washer, a dryer, a couch, domestic material versus the vehicle, the boats, trailers, and ATVs, canoes. So those are not domestic material. We could have probably put the definition, but I looked at the dictionary, and it's just the domestic material is everything else. But because we do speak, if we didn't speak about the boats and the trailer,
right,
you could have probably be encompassed in it. But now because there is two, it's domestic material.
Okay.
Different from the boats.
Through the chair, why is it that we are seeking such a high property standard through this bylaw? Is this like a general thing, as most communities have such high standards and such tight rules, or?
Actually, this one here is actually not bad compared to other places. Like places they won't even allow a clothesline on your backyard. So that one here, at least will still allow you to park trailers, boats. Some places they won't even allow a trailer on your property. You have to park it someplace else. So it is a high standard, but it's not too bad of a high standard. Especially for front of property, like, that's if you remember some of the front property on Manitou here, I mean, we don't want those.
No, through the chair, I understand that, and I understand that we definitely want to have nice looking yards, but with that in mind, I mean, some people don't have access to their backyards, and some people are very limited for space.
That's correct.
Some people are in, say, financial hardship where that front of their house might not get painted and or that window might not get repaired. And it just kind of raises concerns as to what type of community are we trying to build here.
Well, actually, though, through the chair, this here, the old one, has got the exact same thing that the new one, except the new one has more of the outside property, which include the outside and the inside of the house. This one only, most of it was inside of the house, and like the windows, but it was never followed. And it was already there. The only difference in this one, it says that your yard should be clear of waste that prevent fire, safety, and one more, and that's all. So, you had a bunch of junk in front of your yard. Was it a fire hazard? Was it a safety hazard? So that was kind of hard. So this one here, probably the same, but it's explicit more. There's more words into it. So there's not really any changes from the appearance of the house from this one to the old bylaw. Except we never followed it.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one more comment for you, Councillor Scapanello. With our approved community improvement plan, Council has the ability to offer financial incentives to homeowners to upgrade the exterior of their property. And we haven't developed the program yet, but certainly facade improvements such as painting and windows could be an eligible item that people can make an application for a grant or a loan for to assist them with those costs. So that's how the community revitalization plan, the community improvement plan, and the property standards bylaw can all work together to create the community that we would like to have.
Yeah, through the chair, I completely respect the image that we're trying to portray. I just fear that in the long term, people who once loved this community for the reason that they were able to park their boat and or camper in their front yard because they didn't have access to their backyard, and then all of a sudden now they're being scrutinized and or fined and or penalized for these actions. It just may maybe deter people from staying in, in the long term. Is what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking. I mean, I could be overthinking it per se, but I wouldn't like to see people be deterred from tighter and stricter rules. And I understand you say that they were already there once upon a time, and moving forward, if they're going to be there, and as long as it's not an issue for, I guess, neighbors and things like that, I can see it not being an issue going forward as well. Or
Well, so Dave and I kind of discussed this a little bit, and we're talking about storage of vehicle in the front yard. And depending, if somebody has a snow machine and he comes in and he parks it on the snow in the front yard, and the next day he's going out someplace and he's working, well, if the community accepts that, well, we'll probably accept that. It's mostly for storage that people will put it there, it doesn't move, and I'll stay there for the whole yard is packed.
so through the chair, my concern is that, for instance, and again, this is maybe out in left field, but if somebody has an issue with a neighbor or a problem that doesn't really concern the snow machine in the front yard, and yet she says, I'm going to cause this guy an inconvenience because he doesn't have access to his backyard, I'm going to say, I don't like that snow machine being in the front there. Are you going to make that person move that snow machine, go park it somewhere else because one person has an issue with it?
I would say no. But then again, this is first and second reading. It's going to go to the public.
Yeah.
And if 99% of the people in town say, I want to park my this, I want to do that, well, maybe it's up to decide what we're going to do next. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the public probably will make the decision.
Through the chair, when is this going to go to the public, and for how long are they going to be able to comment?
Can comment till October 29th, I believe, or...
Yes.
Oh, so that notice is
Yeah, so that's part of the report, and it's our intention to have the draft bylaw back to council at the November 10th council meeting with any changes as identified by the public consultation. Sorry, and just to clarify, the clerk has pointed out that section 4.12 does speak to the storage of boats, recreational vehicles, trailers, and similar vehicles.
In particular, through the chair, B1 speaks to if there's no reasonable access to a side yard or backyard due to the severity of yard slopes or natural features, that they can park in the residential driveway. So 4.12E1.
Yeah, I read the document. I understand we can park in their driveway. Some people tend to park things in their front yard to allow access in the driveway. So, I mean, it is what it is, I suppose.
And again, I mean, right now it's just a draft.
Yeah.
And it could be an example, for example, that, maybe a snow machine or an ATV in the front or a boat may be acceptable, but maybe the 35-foot camper that's sideways in front of the house, well, maybe we'll say, well, no, that's not acceptable. And if it's new or it's not deteriorating and it's something you're using, well, that's one thing compared to somebody's putting a whole bunch of junk in the front of the house and never use it.
Through the chair, I have no issues with it as long as we're going to be looking at the incident or the case and making a fair decision based on the individual, not saying this is how it's going to be for everybody. Right? And I understand that's what a bylaw is, but we have to be realistic about every
Is
situation.
the intention of this bylaw just to make sure that nobody parks their vehicle or their ATV permanently on the front lawn, right? That's what your intention is.
Storage.
Yeah,
You
so
know.
basically, we're not saying they can't park there, we're saying you can't park it there permanently.
That's fair, yeah.
And through you, Mr. Chair, one more thing, that with the bylaw also comes an opportunity for a property standards committee. So if someone did something that contravened the policy or the bylaw, there is an appeal process that would come to the committee, and the committee would review the information and work with the individual. So it's not set in stone. It is very flexible, but it does set out the expectations and the guidelines.
Perfect, thank you.
So through the chair, so if you look at the clear and clean bylaw that keep mandatory attractive, for the outside, it's exactly the same as a property standard. And the difference is that on the one for the keep mandatory attractive, there's no appeal process. So we didn't really enforce that one yet, because when this one comes in effect and then somebody's maybe get an order to remove something and they don't agree, like CO said, you can appeal the process to the committee, and if the committee decide no, that's the way it's going to be, you still can go to appeal to a judge within 20 days, and then the judge makes the decision, and it could be a yes or no. So he has a bit better process to use the property standard than the clear and clean bylaw.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, so 4.9 sea cans, it says prohibited use, no person shall have a sea can on any portion of residential property, and no person shall use a sea can for a dwelling or any part of a dwelling. Why not?
And also there'll be an addition in there that says a trailer up to 53 foot will not be allowed on the property either. Do you want to take that?
Would it not be the equivalent of a garage? Because somebody does use one for a garage.
Correct. There are appropriate uses for sea cans, and there are appropriate locations for sea cans. The difficulty becomes when an individual uses a sea can for a garage or a storage, that the township does not get any additional tax dollars for that. There's been no building permit process. It is a portable and mobile storage unit, and that those should be used primarily in the industrial area and not in a residential area.
So through the chair, in Part B, it says it can't be used for a dwelling or part of a dwelling. I know of other, not near here, but other townships that people do actually turn them into tiny homes, and they have no issues with those. Is that what you're trying to avoid, is people doing that sort of thing?
We did talk about that when we were putting the bylaw together, and we did discuss that we know that there are some very nice places that are constructed from sea cans, but generally they are completed with a facade that covers the exterior of the sea can. So when you're looking at it, you wouldn't know that it was a sea can, that it is a constructed material. And that gets away from kind of that industrial look that the sea cans bring to a residential area.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, could we not allow sea cans with the intent or the expectation that it was to be covered, and there would be a set fee as to what they would pay for that to be on their property? Is that something we could consider? Because, I mean, they are a good, strong building, and it's not, you clean it up a little bit, you put some siding on it, or make it look nice, present something that you're planning on bringing forward, would that be something the township would consider?
Yes. Yeah. If it was a permanent structure and that it fit with the property and in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
So through the chair, is that something that could be changed in that, amended in that bylaw?
But then if that happened, then it's not a C-can anymore, now it's a garage.
And you need a permit, building permit to fix
That's
it
what I
up.
would look
Yes.
at. If
That's what it sounds
If
like.
you got to kind of model it to be a garage, then it's not a C-can, so therefore, then it's a garage, then you wouldn't have to worry about it, just get a permit to build a garage. That makes sense? I don't know.
Through the chair, when you get a permit to build a garage, you have to provide a plan and all sorts of things like that. Whereas this is already a structure that you're just placing there. How would that be different than if you just bought a prefab garage? Because it's still going to be a same kind of structure.
Yeah. But what we're trying to get away is from the C-can.
I understand that, the look of a C-can in a residential area.
So that's certainly something that we can look into, how other municipalities have managed that and what process they take through the building permit application process.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because it could be an exemption into the C-can to say, if no, it's in that section, if it's done this way, and this way, then it could be done.
Yeah. I think that would be something to look at.
Any further questions?
Through the chair, since we're on the C-can issue, and I'm not going to name any individuals that have one already, except the one in behind the SO station, which is not a residential person, but it's a C-can there that's visual, that I'm pretty sure that it originally was supposed to be at least hidden by a fence, and that has not been done. So that might be something that one of the first things that we can approach.
Yes, thank you for bringing that forward. And yes, that is a concern. And we have been working with the owner of that property to complete that construction of the fence this year. It is getting late in the year, and we will follow up to see where they're at with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, and be it further resolved that upon conclusion of council's review and consideration, that council pass the first and second readings of the property standards bylaw, and further that council direct staff to put this draft property standards bylaw out for public review and comment for a 1-month period, and further that council direct staff to bring the final draft property standards bylaw back to council for review and consideration at the regular November 10th, 2021 council meeting. All in favor?
Thank you.
Next item is the administration report, ADM 2021-39, submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, September 30th, dated September 22nd, 2021.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Earlier this month, we received correspondence from AMO on how municipalities can work with First Nation communities and Indigenous residents regarding the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation recommendations. And staff met at our last management meeting to put some ideas together on how the Township of Manitowoc can support our Indigenous neighbors. And in the report, we've outlined a number of events and social media information that we can put out this month. Truth and Reconciliation Day is a national stat holiday for federal workers. The province of Ontario has not passed it as a stat holiday in Ontario. There is a lot of lobbying going on for that to happen. And some municipalities have just made it a paid holiday for their staff in Ontario. But our recommendation to council is to pass a resolution supporting Truth and Reconciliation and supporting September 30th as a national holiday, and directing staff to take on a number of events over the next week to acknowledge the recommendations.
Questions? Okay, I'll read the resolution. Whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, released its final report on June 2nd, 2015, which included 94 calls for action to address the legacy of the residential schools and advance the process of Canadian reconciliation. And whereas the recent discoveries of remains and unmarked graves across Canada have led to increased calls for all levels of government to address the recommendations in the TRC's calls of action. Whereas all Canadians and all orders of government have a role to play in reconciliation, and whereas Reconciliation number 20 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission called upon the federal government in collaboration with Aboriginal people to establish as a statutory holiday a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation to ensure that public recommendations for the history and legacy of residential schools remains a vital component of the reconciliation process. And whereas the federal government has announced September 30th, 2021 as the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, National Orange Shirt Day, and a statutory holiday. And therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Manitowoc does hereby commit to recognizing September 30th, 2021 as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, National Orange Shirt Day, by sharing the stories of residential school survivors, their families, and community. All in favor? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Moffat, second by Councillor Hudson. Whereas Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-40 submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding interim fire chief.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. With the pending transition to retirement of Mr. Owen Cranny, our fire chief, staff had to put a plan together to make sure that the township has a fire chief overseeing the operation of the department and meeting our federal and provincial regulations. And we reached out to the town of Marathon to see if there was interest and ability for their fire chief to provide interim support to the township of Manitowoc. And we were very pleased to learn that they were eager and happy to support us in that regard, to build better working relationships with the township of Manitowoc and to help us out in a difficult time. And this report outlines that Earl Grigg is their fire chief. He's been working with them since 2020 and brings close to 30 years of experience as a volunteer firefighter, a senior officer, and a fire chief to the operation. And it's council's duty to appoint the fire chief, and so this report is a recommendation to appoint Earl Grigg as the interim fire chief, and he will provide support to us in terms of public education, training for the department, and emergency response, as well as help us to recruit and hire a new full-time fire chief for the township of Manitowoc.
Questions? Any? Okay, no questions? Okay. All right. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council appoints Mr. Earl Grigg, interim fire chief for the Township of Manitowoc, effective September 22nd, 2021, until a new full-time fire chief is recruited for the Township of Manitowoc, and further that Council repeals bylaw number 20 17-04, appointing Owen Cranny as Fire Chief of the Township of Manitowoc, effective September 22nd, 21, and further that Council wishes Mr. Cranny an enjoyable and relaxing transition to retirement and thanks him for his many years of dedicated service to the Township of Manitowoc. All in favor? Okay. Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-41, submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding personnel policies.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, 3 new personnel policies to add to the ever-growing binder of policies. These ones are regarding vacation benefits and statutory holidays, and they follow all provincial legislation in terms of meeting the Employment Act, ensuring that staff take their earned time off to get away from the job, de-stress, and it outlines how and when you accumulate vacation. It's very specific regarding the number of years worked and prorating that if someone is transitioning between the guidelines that are laid out, and ensuring that all staff are aware of what they are eligible to receive in terms of vacation benefits and statutory holidays. So this is just to be fair and consistent and transparent with the public as well as with all staff.
Questions? None? Thank you. And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council approves Personnel Policy Number 2021-08, Vacation Policy and Review, and further that Council approves Personnel Policy Number 2021-09, Benefit Policy, and further that Council approves Personnel Policy 2021-10, Statutory Holiday Policy. All in favor? Okay. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roller. Resolved that Council is in receipt of Administration Report ADM 2021-42, submitted by Florence McLean, CAO, regarding surplus property, Ashwegan Road, barn property.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As Council is aware, we've recently repatriated a large parcel of property back to the township. The property has been cleaned up, and it was formerly used for the keeping of horses. The property has been surveyed, and staff have confirmed that the survey is on file with the Lands and Titles Office, and it has a property identification number assigned to it. It's currently zoned rural and allows for some specific uses, but this report is to request Council to consider declaring the property surplus and having the real estate agent that we work with do a comparable market analysis to set a value and a price on the property, and then to list that property for sale.
Questions, if any? And be it further resolved that upon conclusion of Council's review and consideration, that Council declares property identification number PIN 62428-0511, formerly known as the barn property, located on Ashwegan Road, as surplus property, and further that Council directs staff to assign a physical address for the property, and further that Council directs staff to work with Simone Donaldson, Remax Generations Realty, to establish a comparable market price for the property, and further that the property be listed for sale once a price has been established. All in favor? Next item is bylaws. Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Being a bylaw to prescribe standards for the maintenance and occupancy of property, to provide for the enforcement of the standards, and to appoint a property standards committee, be read a first and second time. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Hudson, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Being a bylaw to revoke appointment and to repeal bylaw number 2017-04 be read, and bylaw number 2017-05 be read a first and second time. And further be read a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2021-35. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Scapanello. Being a bylaw to appoint an interim fire chief for the Corporation of the Township of Manitouwadge, Earl Gregg, be read a first and second time. And furthermore, be read a third time, passed and numbered as bylaw number 2021-36. All in favor? Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Hudson. Whereas Section 239(4) of the Municipal Act, 2001 SO 2001 C25, provides that before holding a meeting or part of a meeting that is to be closed to the public, the municipality or local board or committee of either of them shall state by resolution the fact of holding of the closed meeting and the general nature of the matter to be considered at the closed meeting. Now therefore be resolved that this meeting is hereby closed to the public, as the subject matter being discussed falls under the following section. Section 239(2)E, litigation of potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. 22 Huron Walk. All in favor? Thank you.